morning and welcome to the Ad Hoc Scrutiny Panel, a residential housing stock health and safety compliance panel for our December meeting. Can I ask if there are any apologies for absence? We've got Councillor Pinnock who's sent her apologies. Do we have any others?
I
No?
don't have any, Chair, no.
Okay. Will the panel members like to introduce themselves, please? Linda?
Good morning. My name's Linda Summers. I'm a co-optee on the panel.
Thank you. Councillor Smith?
Yep, Councillor Anthony Smith, Councillor for the Lindley Ward and member of the panel.
Kevin?
Hi, Kevin McAllister, and I'm a co-optee to the panel.
Thank you. Councillor Lee Richards? I think she is with us, but I think she's having a few technical issues this morning. Okay. And Councillor Uppal, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, apologies, I'm having a few problems with my laptop this morning. I'm Harpreet, I'm a councillor in Ashbrown. I chair the Neighbourhood Scrutiny Panel. Thank you.
Thank you. I think a few people having a few problems this morning. Item 2, then, minutes of the previous meetings. The minutes from the 26th of October and the 10th of November are in the papers. Do we agree those as a true record? Yes.
Yes,
Are
Chair.
there any matters arising from them? No. Linda?
Yeah, there was just one. It's a minor point really, but on the second set of minutes, so the 10th of November one, on the second page of those minutes, page 6 of our pack, fourth bullet point up from the bottom, it talks about maybe possible to share the audit plan with the panel in December. And I just wondered if we were going to be able to see that.
Okay, yes. I was hoping so. Michelle, have you got any updates on that?
Sorry, which item are we looking at? Apologies.
Page 6 of the papers, it
Yeah.
said it was anticipated that share the audit plan with the panel in December. This would be a question for Eric, wouldn't it?
I think
Do
that's what I was going to say,
Yes,
Councillor
it's
Smith.
yes,
I think
it's Eric.
it was for Eric.
Okay.
I'll chase that up, Linda, and I think we've got a meeting after Christmas to discuss the programme planning for the rest of the meeting, so I'll make sure that's included.
That's great, thank you.
Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chair. Page 9, towards the bottom. I think we were hoping maybe for an update on the tenders.
Yes. So there follows an informal meeting after this meeting, and I think there will be some updates on where they are at this moment in time. Naz has joined us now, so Naz, yes, I think you'll be updating in the informal meeting, will you, on that?
I can confirm I will do that, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay then, so any interests that any members have got to declare? No, thank you. All items are taken in public in this part of the meeting. There is an informal meeting after this meeting. Deputations and petitions. Do we have any deputations and petitions? No.
Sorry, my microphone was on mute. No, Chair, sorry.
Any public questions?
No questions.
Okay, then let's move to the fire safety resident engagement framework, and we have with us today representatives from the Tenant Advisory and Grant Panel, the Housing Advisory Board, Tenants and Residents Associations, and a fire safety champion as well. So Michelle, were you going to introduce this item?
I will do. Thank you, Councillor Smage. Graham's going to cover most of the item. We've got a short presentation for you, but just to introduce the presentation. So the panel will be aware we've previously discussed the role of fire safety champions And you do have a fire safety champion on the call, Paul. So welcome, Paul. We've also discussed in more detail with the panel our approach to engaging and communicating with residents. So what we're going to do today is focus very much on the overarching fire safety management plan, and particularly the fire safety resident engagement framework that sits as an integral part of the plan. It is a requirement that, a government requirement that we have a focused resident engagement framework, and that's what we're going to focus on today. And of course, you've got resident representatives who will have an opportunity to answer any questions from the panel about how that is working so far. The resident engagement framework in the fire safety management plan describes our approach to ensuring that the voice of residents is strong and effective in relation to fire safety management practices. This doesn't sit in isolation. It responds to the Social Housing White Paper, new fire safety and fire safety bill legislation, and also supports the recommendations in the Building Safety Engagement Best Practice Report that was released early this year in March. All aimed at giving residents that stronger voice in relation to fire safety practices. So I'm going to hand over to Graham now to take you through the short presentation around what is in the framework itself. Thank you. And just to say, the framework doesn't just focus on our high-risk residential buildings, it also focuses on wider stock, including our low-rise buildings. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Michelle, for the introduction. This morning, as Michelle says, I'll speak through the approach to fire safety engagement and some of the things we're doing and how we're measuring that, and some next steps for us. So some of the information in the slides that I'll present this morning, you will have seen before at previous scrutiny meetings. So I'll spend the majority of my time just speaking about how we're engaging with the blocks outside the fire safety management plan, so those low-rise blocks that we manage across Kirklees. So I just wanted to start by speaking about the work of the Tenant Advisory and Grants Panel, and we have Antoinette and Mel with us this morning, Chair and Vice Chair of that panel. So they have fire safety and compliance as a standing item on their agenda at every meeting. They receive regular updates on the rollout of this fire safety management plan, which includes the resident engagement framework. The review documents relating to fire safety, comms and offer feedback. So some examples there are the newsletters that we're writing out to high-rise and six-storey blocks. They've looked at letters to tenants around how to maintain fire doors and things like that. So they're a great sounding board for us to make sure that we're getting those messages right, they're understandable and clear for our tenants and leaseholders. The panel did a lot of work on the development of the fire safety champions. So right from its inception, in terms of writing the role description through to recruitment and helping us to come up with a training plan, training package for the champions, and most importantly to us, they continue to ask lots of questions, and we've been on a journey as officers and panel in terms of increasing our knowledge around fire safety. And they continue to ask challenging questions, of which we do our very best to respond to. So some of the approaches for residents in high risk buildings, and these are things you've probably seen before at the previous sessions. So we want tenants, leaseholders to participate in the ongoing safety of their buildings and have a voice. So, for example, they're being the fire safety champions. We want to proactively support tenants to understand the layers of protection in their buildings, give access to fire risk assessments and maintenance information. We feel I'll rephrase that, we know it's important that tenants, leaseholders have that information, so that we can have meaningful engagement with tenants, leaseholders on safety matters. We want them to be involved in decision making on changes to buildings that have an impact on safety. So an example there is the work around the high-rise buildings at Berrybrow and Buxton House in the town centre, where we consulted with them on the future of those buildings, with safety at the heart of that consultation. And then obviously the final point there, that residents have a clear and quick escalation and redress route available to them. So how we're doing that, we've got notice boards going across all the high-rise and 6-storey buildings. I've spoken about the newsletters previously. We've just released a Christmas newsletter to all high-rise and 6-storey blocks about keeping safe over the festive period. We send out numerous emails and letters to tenants and leaseholders about what's going on the block, really with a focus around compliance work at the moment. So where we're putting in new fire doors, communal fire doors, and other levels of protection. The important thing for me there is that we're always including a named officer. So the letters come as standard, but in the newsletter as well, we're updating on who the current housing officer is, dropping in the names and contact details of the fire safety, resident engagement, housing officer and team leader. I've got fire safety information on the website. The compliance videos continue to be developed. So we've just signed off on the gas safety video. We're in the process of animating the fire safety video, and in the other areas of compliance, we're at a storyboard stage, so they continue to be developed. We'll continue with estate and communal area inspections with housing officers. We've got the fire safety champions, as mentioned before, and TRAs and community voices across some of those buildings, not all of those buildings, some of those buildings. Leaseholder engagement. So the fire safety resident engagement team have contacted the majority of leaseholders living in this type of accommodation and had a conversation around how they feel about Kirklees Council as a landlord keeping them safe, understanding their responsibilities for keeping themselves safe, and how confident they feel about escalating any concerns that they may have. So I just want to touch on the non HRRBs, so the low-rise blocks. So it's pretty much what I've discussed already for high-rise. The approach is very, very similar. I think the bits I pull out of this slide is the work around specific issues attached to a block, and I'll just give some examples there to paint a bit of a picture. So we've got a number of blocks at the Dales estate, which is Hetmanwyke. We needed to put in some new bin stores, which linked back to fire risk assessments and the action from that. We were able to work with cleansing officers to deal with some of the waste issues there and the low levels of recycling. So we've just recently evaluated that, and there's been some really positive stories around that work into recycling levels. First of all, tenants leaseholders are really happy with the new bin stores. They look a lot smarter and improve the look of the estate. Recycling levels are really high at the moment, and it's really positive, as well as addressing the FRA action. Another example there is when we went to Brooklyn in Clackheaton last week, and there were some concerns around evacuation, and some mixed messaging around evacuation. When the alarm goes off, and some tenants had concerns. So we've been out via the fire safety resident engagement team and spoke to a number of people who were really happy with our approach. I'm just conscious of time, and I don't want to steal the time of our tenants that are on the call. So I think we've probably talked about everything there. So our approach going forward. so we'll have resident engagement plans for every high-rise building, and that comes with the introduction of the building safety managers. More opportunities for discussion and co-design on fire safety practices, more residents coming together around common purpose to help create and maintain successful and safe living, and then greater involvement with ward members, especially around those low-rise blocks where those are scattered across the borough, unlike high-rise where we're working with members from 3 wards. So we'll be bringing in members to support that work going forward. Real focus for the beginning of next year is just evaluating the effectiveness of these messages. So the roles of the champions, the newsletters that we've been sending out, to making sure that they're being read, the messaging is clear, and it's what people want to read at the end of the day as well, because it needs to be tailored to meet the needs of our tenants and leaseholders. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine. Sorry, I couldn't get to my mute button there. That's fine. Thank you, Graham. Do you want to pull down the presentation then, please,
Will do.
so that we can see everybody? Thank you. Okay, and if Antoinette, Mel, Brooke, and Paul would like to put the cameras on, please do so if you would like to. If you don't want to, then don't worry. Okay. So I think we'd like to hear from yourselves now, if that's possible. Can I sort of just open it and say thank you for coming today? I think we've put a number of questions forward, and can I open the questions by asking how you feel that you're able to hold the council to account in relation to compliance? So do we want to go to Antoinette and Mel first, who are on the grants panel?
Yep. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Mel and I have got together and put together a short presentation, but we can't do things. We just talk to it.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to start, and then Mel will take over. As a lot of people, we would have preferred to do this in person, but events overtook us. The members of the tenants advisory and grants panel are all tenants of Kirklees. Some of us residing in different things. I myself live in a 6-storey block. Mel lives in retirement living scheme. We have fire safety on the agenda for every single meeting. And at each meeting, we demand and expect answers and updates on fire safety issues that we've raised previously. There are occasions when we don't get information as quickly as we think we should do. And on these occasions, we escalate that request up through the management structure. You know, to more senior managers. But we'd like to say that we get excellent support from the managers, particularly Graham and Robert. And sometimes the information that request is from other areas that they don't have direct control over. So they're waiting for somebody to feed back to them so they can feed to us. So that's how it works sometimes. We have an effective method of bringing forward issues that still require attention. We have a follow-up action tracker in place, which is a written document that we look at every meeting. And we also have a very excellent collective memory on the panel, so nothing gets past us. So I'm going to hand over to Mel now to do the remainder of the information.
Morning, everybody. The Tennyton Advisory Panel are very persistent and don't let things slide. We continually challenge the authority on this and other issues. Tenants' feedback in various ways, directly to individual members of the panel, or collectively through TRAs and street voices. Fire safety champions, sorry, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Fire safety information provided to tenants in high-rise and six-storey blocks has improved markedly. It's something that's very high on our thoughts when we're in meetings, and we question this all the time. The panel recognised that individual tenants have responsibilities of their own, and visitors. The council, as our landlord, has the responsibility to ensure that their policies and procedures are carried out. We are fully aware of how to raise fire safety issues, escalate upwards, keep going till we get an answer. If life-threatening issues, sorry, fire service and upwards, we question, and ultimately to HSE, local government ombudsman. We persist. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm faltering a little bit.
No, don't worry about it. It's absolutely fine. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Mel is just emphasising that we are persistent. We do not let things get past us to the stage that we can probably be, I don't know what the word is, but we just don't let it go. We keep going.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mel, had you drawn to a close, or was there anything else?
No,
that was
yeah.
fine. Okay. Can I bring Brooke in then? Brooke from the Housing Advisory Board.
Sorry, I was on mute there. I just have a question for Antoinette or Mel, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I used to live in one of the 6 stories, but not through the council. I was always very worried about my elderly neighbours, of how they would deal with a fire. Do you have a fire escape plan, for evacuating?
We have a stay safe policy in the 6-storey blocks. It used to be a stay put policy, but following Grenfell, when stay put was questionable, it's now a stay safe policy, and every tenant knows about it. There's notices up on by the lifts, which you don't use in a fire safety, but every tenant knows about it, or has the opportunity to know about it.
Yeah, so I think I'll bring Paul in a minute, because I think Paul could address that question. Can I ask Brooke or Isaac, how do you feel that the board that you sit on holds the council to account in relation to compliance?
Well, perhaps I could give it a step. We basically look at all the strategy and the plan and the finances.
Right.
And so, and also the risks associated with all the programs that they are having. And we hold them to account. We question any variances. It's like perhaps if your expenditure goes out of sync, say more than 3%, we want to know why. And if they perhaps have any excesses, or they go beyond their budgets, then we need to know. And we have a very amenable team of managers. You know, we have Eric, we have Naz and the others, and they treat us fairly because we also treat them fairly, but with due diligence. We are saying this is what we want to know, you know, in terms of the laid down, you know, terms that we were given. So it's not a pugnacious kind of an arrangement, but it is an arrangement that says, you know, we need accountability here, and you know, we hold you to account, and you know, if things have to be escalated, they will be escalated. But you know, that's how I'm sure Brooke could sort of second that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that the border, they take the responsibility very seriously, and we are very thorough. And Assad comes onto our board as well and always gives us a review of what's going on, and that's really informative as well.
Okay, all right, thanks. Paul, then can I come to you, Paul, then now, because you're an actual fire safety champion, aren't you? So how is it going so far? And are the fire champions clear about the role, etc.?
I think so. I mean, so far we haven't done a huge amount so far. We've had the induction. We had some basic fire safety training at the induction. We then had a tour of the high rise to see what work is being done there, and we met the new boss of social housing in Kirklees there. We had a tour of the security room. We met the team doing all the fire door improvement works at the high rise, and that's basically been it so far. By the way, I do live in a 6-story block myself on the top floor, and it was interesting to hear some of the other comments. I don't think the tenants at Fairhill Flats and Wayne Court have that same level of information about the stay safe policy. I mean, we don't have any notices up at all. So I don't think that's been uniformly communicated at this stage.
All right, thanks. That's really important that that is addressed. Yes. Yeah, so can I open it up for questions now from the panel themselves? Councillor Smith indicated first. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Paul, if you don't mind me coming back to you, can I just ask, have you got a clear understanding of what the role is going to develop into? And do you feel supported and valued by the council? Have you had any engagement with the tenants? Are they on side? Does everybody understand what's going on?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there needs to be a lot more information. I mean, this meeting today is quite a bit of an eye-opener because there's various panels and committees that, as a normal tenant, I'm totally unaware of. I'm not part of the sort of TRA tenant voice setup, so I'm sort of out of step with all of that. So that's quite interesting. But the amount of tenant engagement I've had, apart with a few neighbours, hasn't been massive. But I think it's something we probably need to build on in that respect. Probably need to speak to the local TRA or the local tenant voice and make sure that we're all that we all know what's going on.
Yeah, I think there's a piece of work to be done there from the sounds of it, isn't there, around tenant communication? Yeah. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Uppal.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to everyone who's here today to speak to us. I guess I was just going to ask something pretty similar to Anthony, really, and it was just to, and anyone can answer. It's just, you know, do you feel that when you are raising issues that you are listened to, and do you feel confident or reassured that the issues that you're raising are taken back and they are actioned, and that you will get a response? So you know what's going on, that you're able to keep on top of any actions that you've raised, and you know what's happening in terms of monitoring that. I guess the main thing is, do you feel like the key issues that you're raising are listened to and then steps are taken to do something about it? Or it might be a bit early on to say something about that, but I don't know if anyone can say anything on that.
So, Paul, do you want to go first on that one?
Yeah, I think communication with the council is pretty good. I've got all their emails. They always seem to respond. I'm in touch with the local councillors for Berry Brow. We had an issue with the external fire door in my block, which we were able to report. A piece of plastic. It was only a piece of plastic trim at 4 and across it with the recent storms, and but I was able to email Val and my housing officer, and it was dealt with within hours, really. So I think I know how to. If I see a problem there, I think I know how to progress it and get it fixed. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Antoinette and Mel, do you want to come in on that one?
Yep, I think, sorry, as we said before, we are very persistent and we don't let things drop. Usually we get answers, fairly timely, but if we don't, we keep going till we get that answer. We were a bit concerned, I think it was in January this year, that we hadn't received answers to everything. So we wrote to the head of service and said, these are what we want answers to. And they actually met with us as a special meeting and answered each of our queries.
Okay, thanks. Isaac and Brooke, do you want to say anything on that question?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. We get along with in terms of communications with the whole management side of issues, and even they've gone to the extent of even providing some training for us as when we got on board and orientation. And I think Michelle, who's on the call here, has also been part of that. And we've been provided with laptops. So in terms of communications and teams, we are spot on. And so, in terms of communications and emails and telephones, and check on us to find out, if we are happy and, if things are happening as they ought to be happening. So it's a two-way street. If we have any issues, we pick up the phone, or if it's supposed to be formal, we make it formal in writing. And invariably in the meetings, we get most of our answers on the spot. So we usually don't have issues dragging unless they are business as usual items. Then those have to be reported as they progress. Some issues are live, so it's like the issues to do with fire. It's in all, like if you talk about the advisory grant team, they talk about fire. We also talk about fire. I think our basis was the white paper on Grenfell. So these things are become embedded in us, and we are aware of these things. And so working with the colleagues there is just a wonderful time in terms of communications. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Linda, you wanted a question.
Yes, thank you. And thanks ever so much to the guest to this meeting. It's been really useful hearing from you firsthand. I wonder if I can ask a question. You've talked about how you communicate with members within the council and get answers to your questions. My question was about how you communicate the other way with the wider tenant body, really, and leaseholders. You obviously will know about any issues or concerns in your own block or where you live, but how do you keep yourself up to speed with any issues that other tenants might have? How can they get in touch with you, and how do you make yourselves known to them so they know where to go?
Antoinette, yeah,
Thank you. Yeah. We do the tenant, and I nearly said the tenant and leaseholder panel, but that's what we used to be. Our panel meets every single month. We meet both with officers once a month, and before that formal meeting, we meet together as a group of tenants to look at what's going to be on the agenda and see what we can all contribute to that. As well as that, we go to the we have TRA meetings, and we have lone voices. We also go to the forum meetings, which are held 4 times a year usually, where we meet with TRAs and voices from all around the area. and the panel go to both north and south meetings so we can get a good spread of ideas.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah. Isaac and Brooke, did you have anything from the Housing Advisory Board on this?
I was gonna say I like to go out to my community centre and get their feedback as well, and it's really important that we also network like we are doing now between all the different panels. But anytime there's anything that, you know, we need a question answering, like Isaac said, we get it answered pretty quick. And if there's anything that we don't know, they'll go and find it for us. Any training that we want, they'll go provide it for us. And we need that as well, so that things like when I go out into my community centre and the community have a question for me, then I can understand, you know, what I need to do and then take that back to my board. So yeah, it's really about networking, and I think that we're all doing a fantastic job.
Okay, thanks. Paul, I'm not sure that this question applies to yourself, but have you anything that you want to add about your role in this
No,
respect? No,
not at the moment.
no.
I think some more training
Yeah,
will be required as we go along, and also being kept in loop, because you know what I'm hearing from the other tenants here is very interesting, because we don't. I'm not aware of anything. I'm not aware. How can I put this? I'm not aware of any of these interactions that have been going on between the tenants and the council. Where we are anyway, we largely you'd have to go to some effort to find out what's going on.
Right.
So I think that needs to be addressed. And also, I will have to do some more networking to make sure that, you know, I'm communicating with, you know, my neighbours and fellow tenants properly as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Kevin, you had a question.
Yeah, as well as that, I'd just like to second Linda in thanking residents here for attending. It's really valuable to hear your experiences as much as anything. So thank you for your time. I was just the council trying a lot in terms of best practice communication, in terms of putting out you know, compliance videos, and I think it's limited to high-rise residential buildings in terms of sharing the fire risk assessments. I was wondering if you're aware of those resources. And interacting with, you know, and able to use and access and understand them.
So, Paul, is that come to you first?
Can you just repeat the question?
Yeah, I think Kevin.
The council are trying a lot of best practice in terms of putting a range of compliance videos out there for residents, and also I think it's limited to high-rise buildings at the moment, but also sharing the fire risk assessments with residents. I just wondered, are you aware of that, and have you accessed those resources?
No, not at all. I think how I got involved with this is that I think a few years ago I suggested, when our block was being refurbished, because you know Fairhill Flats had a major refurbishment 2-3 years ago, but I think I did suggest back then that the fire assessments were made available to tenants, but I don't think they were.
I think it is just for high-rise residential. I think earlier you said you were in a 6-storey building, so there's a plan to. I think it said there's a plan to roll it out, so it might not be available. Right. But you would be interested in accessing that in future.
Oh, definitely, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, more information, better. Yep.
Yeah, it is. Yes, Antoinette.
Yeah, just to say that we certainly, I live in a 6-storey block, and the fire risk assessments are online. We did raise that they weren't specific to each individual 6-storey block, but they are now.
All right.
Which is interesting. And we also, I don't know how many of you can see it. This is the latest newsletter that's come, and that's gone to every tenant. And I mean, it's talking about keeping safe at Christmas, which is always a difficult time because people want to put decorations up, not realising in all cases that they can be a fire or a trip hazard to other residents. So we just keep going.
Okay, yeah. Graham, you wanted to come in?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Smedge. I just wanted to go back to that previous question about joining tenants up, and I think it was Linda that raised it. On the fire safety champion front, we're looking, as numbers increase, to get fire safety champions together in a forum. So that would obviously be linked to the fire safety champion training, but also looking at best practice across blocks. So champions can talk about what works in their blocks and where we can move that information into other blocks as well. So I just wanted to mention that one.
Okay, thanks. And Graham, can I ask you a quick question? The forum meetings have been mentioned, one in the north, one in the south.
Yep.
And in previous times, ward councillors were notified of the meetings, and if they wanted to go and attend, they could. Obviously, there were TRA meetings,
Yep.
but councillors could attend if they wanted.
Yep.
Is that not the case anymore?
They stopped during the pandemic. We've held two as part of our recovery planning. The first one, members weren't invited, as it was a bit of an informal catch-up. There wasn't really a set agenda.
Okay.
We've recently held them, I think it was December, and I'm pretty sure members were invited to Council
Right, I
Smedge.
must just have missed
I
that.
will double check.
Yeah.
So the next one
I
will
must have
be
missed it.
March, but members will
March.
be invited. We'll get back into the normal cycle.
Yeah, get back into the normal cycle. That's fine, because I always found them really interesting to hear how people were feeling across an area, and not just in my ward as well. So, because obviously we all meet with our own TRAs on a regular basis, it's interesting to hear that wider perspective as well. Linda.
Yeah, it was just one point of detail really for Antoinette. she had mentioned in passing when underlining the persistence of her panel that they had an action tracker that allowed her to keep track that things were being followed up, or to keep following up what wasn't being dealt with. I wondered if you would be willing to share that tracker with the panel, just so we can get a flavour for what it is you're dealing with.
I don't see why not, because it's just as we're working along, and the board get the minutes. I'm not sure if the tracker's attached to those minutes or not. Members of the board have been attending our meeting as observers, and we're going to go to the board as observers as well. So I don't see why not. Unless somebody can come up with a reason why not. I can't see a reason.
That's great, thanks. Graham?
There is no reason why those can't be shared. We always had an aspiration to make the minutes from TLP and now TGAP, TAGP public. We just need to find the right mechanism to do it. It's likely to be shared through the website, but it's for us. It's all about transparency, and we want to celebrate the work of that panel as well and show all the positive things that they're doing. So we'll find a mechanism to share those.
Okay, thank you. We talked about engagement with tenants and leaseholders in non-high-rise buildings, and I just wondered if there was any discussions about the lessons learned from the communication in the high-rise as to how that can be rolled out across Kirklees. And I just wondered if that had been discussed with the Housing Advisory Board and the Tenants Advisory Grant Panel at all. And that's my doorbell that's going, I'm sorry. So Brooke and Isaac, has it been discussed with yourselves?
Most of the information that is about the high-rise buildings, and I was going to ask, I would like fire safety info for the rest of the housing stock, because it's very important. I'm pretty sure that most of my friends that live in houses, if there was an electrical fire, they'd throw water on it because they just have no idea what to do. So I would prefer more fire safety information.
Yeah, okay. Antoinette, what about yourselves?
Yeah, to be honest, I think as far as I'm concerned, although I live in a 6-storey block and we're not subject to the all the issues that the high-rise blocks are, we're still in a block of flats, and I think that everything that goes on there, apart from the things that are specific, will be going on in the 6-storey blocks. You know, we have the same. I am a fire champion for this block, so you know things are going on the same.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's possibly the person who was trying to ring my doorbell, but never mind. Okay, thank you, Antoinette. Naz, you wanted to come in, and I'll switch my mic off.
It was simply to say, I think what you're experiencing here is the kind of, depending on how long people have been in role, it's the kind of the understanding of the mechanisms and the networks and the communication channels. So you'll see that the people who've been on tenant and leaseholder panel and now what is known as the tenant advisory and grants panel are probably the most well informed. On the high rise, in terms of, sorry, on the low rise, in terms of pulling together the same levels of communication and presence, we will certainly do that once we start rolling that program out so that we have real information. It is really worth noting for this panel that low-rise blocks are not in scope in government guidance at this moment in time, and all the high-risk actions that have been identified under the FRAs are being dealt with currently, and all the low and medium risk actions are being wrapped up into the contract that we'll update you on in the private session.
Yes, thank you. Just if we can talk about engagement with tenants just a little bit, you know, about information flow. I think it is important, isn't it, that everybody gets information as soon as possible so that they know what is happening, whether they be in high or low rise. And I just wondered if you could outline what communications have been and will be planned for all the tenants and leaseholders.
Is that a question to officers, Councillor?
Yes, I think so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll let Michelle go first.
Michelle, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'll start and then Graham. I think what we've tried to do, I think I'll just follow on from Naz's point. Statutorily, only the 4 high-rise are actually high-risk residential buildings. We've already expanded our scope to include the 6 stories and the retirement living schemes, and then we're also going to include the low-rise. So that's why that's our priority. I just wanted to kind of clarify that. The process that we've done and the engagement and strategies that are in place for the high rise, the 6-story now that we're working on, and the retirement living schemes that we're moving on to from January, will apply to all our low rise. We will learn along the way what works and what doesn't, and we will roll that out, taking into account good practice along the way. So the intention is that everything that we've updated you on in relation to the high rise and including in the presentation will roll out appropriately for all the buildings that we've got where there are communal areas. It's just about timescales. We have to focus obviously on the ones that we statutorily have responsibility for, on which we as a council have deemed our high risk buildings. But the intention is that everything will apply to all the other low rise. So everything in the presentation today, which will go out with the notes, everything that we've talked about before, fire safety champions, engagement and communications approaches, will apply to all our buildings. It's just about timing and phasing that in an appropriate manner. So doing what we have to do and then doing what we as a council absolutely are committed to do. I don't know if Graham wants to add anything to that.
I'd just support what you were saying, Michelle, and that the real focus on the programme comms has been around the high rise and the 6-story. At previous meeting, I spoke about rolling that out to retirement living schemes. We have piloted approaches with low-rise blocks, and the examples that I gave in my presentation around the bin stores and work at Carr Street in Birstall gives us a real basis to build on. So we're just in the process of developing a comms plan that covers all buildings, including the regeneration work around those high-rise blocks, which we're starting to look at very shortly. So I think it's really positive. I think I'm confident that we know what works, and I just want to do some tweaking in terms of evaluation just to make sure that those messages are hitting home. Obviously, there is still some gaps, as Paul mentioned there, that we need to go back and address. What I'd say is it's that constant messaging, and we can't just tell people once.
Yeah,
we need
yeah.
to keep going back to make
Yes,
sure
yeah.
that those messages are sticking. And just picking up the points with Antoinette and Mel, and I know that they're really keen on ensuring that tenants know our responsibilities as a landlord, but also tenants and leaseholders know what their responsibilities are themselves, both in terms of keeping themselves safe, their families and neighbours safe. So it isn't just a flash in the pan and a tick to say the job's done. We need to keep going back on those messages.
Okay, because I was concerned especially about vulnerable tenants and having personal communication, not just letter and phone calls and texts, that there is actually a discussion with vulnerable tenants as to, as well. Yes.
Face-to-face engagement is so important, Councillor Smage, and I know I've done a lot of work myself on the bin stores where there's fire actions, and when we send things out in the post, we don't get a response. It's knocking at doors and talking to people about why we're implementing these changes, and that's where we're getting the best engagement and the most understanding as well.
Yeah, thank you. And could I ask as well, Naz, this is perhaps one for you. I don't know what the panel feel, but I think it might be a suggestion is maybe having an email to councillors to let them know the process that you're going to follow as far as the engagement is concerned, and doing that quite early in the new year so that everybody understands what is going to happen. I think that might be a good thing, as well as engaging with tenants as soon as possible. But I think an email out to councillors to explain this process.
Absolutely, Councillor Smage. I think what we've done so far is we've written to all the high-rise, all the 6-storey blocks, and to all the retirement living scheme tenants to advise them what's going on already in terms of fire door replacement. And in the new year, we intend to write out to further tenants, just to, as you say, kind of just map out the process. So it's not a question of when we know what the contractor's proposals are in April that we will then write to the tenants. So that will give people, tenants, a kind of a heads up that this is on its way. We're just working through the programming, and we'll be able to give them firmer timescales when we've got the contractor's proposals. And a similar note to elected members would be incredibly helpful, would it not? So absolutely we can.
Yeah, I think it would be, yes.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any other points? Antoinette, do you have anything else that yourself and Mel would like to say?
You're on mute, Antoinette.
Sorry about that. No, I think we've said everything we need to say today. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Isaac and Brooke, do you have anything to add?
No, thank
No,
you.
okay, thanks. No, Isaac? No, Paul?
I think we said what I need to say today.
Okay, all right. Thank you ever so much for attending today. Thank you for your time. It has been really helpful to us all. We need to hear information from all as many voices as possible. So it has been really, really appreciated. Thank you very much for that. So that comes to the end of our formal meeting. I just want to raise a point that the panel has been asked about a report that we have seen that is a confidential report. The confidential report was seen by the panel in July for a meeting that we held, an informal meeting that we held at the start of this scrutiny process. We are holding meetings both informally and formally in order that the panel can see all of the information, because it is really important on this in this subject of compliance that scrutiny can see all of that information in order to scrutinise the whole process that is happening. In 2022, we have 4 further meetings planned where we continue to look at all areas of compliance and risk. So can I wish you all a very happy Christmas and safe Christmas. Thank you for coming. And panel members, we will now move to the informal meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.